Here's the deal. While you're stressing over rising grocery bills, there's a much bigger problem brewing. Imagine walking into your local store and finding out that 30 everyday food items are completely gone. Not for a week, but for months, maybe even years. Sounds extreme? It's not. We're not talking about minor inconveniences here. These are staples you probably have in your kitchen right now, and their disappearance could change how you shop, cook, and eat. With 16 countries already enforcing export bans and food prices skyrocketing by up to 30% globally, the cracks in the system are starting to show. Here's the kicker. Some of these foods are so common you'd never expect them to vanish. But by the end of this video, you'll know exactly which ones are at risk and why your daily cup of coffee might soon feel like a luxury. If you want to stay ahead of the curve and prepare for what's coming, hit that like button and stick around. Let's dive into the 30 foods that might not make it through the next supply chain meltdown. 30 wheat, the crumbling cornerstone. Let's kick things off with the big one, wheat. This isn't just another crop, it's the backbone of nearly everything you eat. Bread, pasta, pizza, beer, wheat is everywhere. But here's the alarming part. Wheat production is projected to drop below 2023 levels by 1%. That might sound small, but in the world of wheat, it's a seismic shift. Ukraine, once known as Europe's breadbasket, has seen its wheat fields turned into battlegrounds. Before the war, Ukraine was one of the top 3 global wheat exporters. Now, much of its farmland is either destroyed or left unharvested. This conflict alone has disrupted a third of the global wheat market. Imagine losing 1 out of every 3 loaves of bread before they're even baked. And it's not just war. Droughts and frost are hammering wheat yields in key agricultural regions. And in India, 5 states produce 88% of the country's wheat, while in the U.S., 5 Midwest states dominate production. When extreme weather hits these areas, the global wheat supply takes a massive hit. Here's the kicker. Wheat accounts for 18% of the world's caloric intake. When wheat becomes scarce, everything from your sandwich bread to your morning cereal becomes a luxury. With La Niña weather patterns expected to persist through early 2025, the foundation of our food system is under serious threat. 29. Rice, the silent collapse. Next up is rice, and if you think it's just a side dish, think again. Rice is a staple for billions of people, making up 19% of the world's caloric intake. But here's the scary part. If India, the world's largest rice exporter, enforces a full export ban, a move they're already considering, global rice exports could plummet by 54% by 2050. That's more than half the world's rice supply gone. And it's not just India. Top rice producing countries like Bangladesh and Indonesia are already seeing production drops of 15% and 12% respectively. These aren't minor dips. They're catastrophic declines happening right now. Bangladesh alone could lose $4 billion, 0 cents, due to rice production failures, while India could face a $9 billion, 0 cents loss. When entire nations lose billions over one crop, the ripple effects are global. Rice prices will skyrocket, and for many, it won't just be expensive, it'll be unavailable. Smart shoppers are already stocking up because when this crisis hits, rice won't just cost more, it might disappear entirely. 28. Corn, the domino effect. Corn isn't just about summer barbecues and corn on the cob. It's the hidden ingredient in almost everything you consume. High fructose corn syrup sweetens your soda, cornstarch thickens your ice cream, and corn feed fattens the meat on your plate. But here's the problem. Corn production is forecast to drop below 2023 levels by 1%. In the U.S., 61% of corn comes from just 5 Midwest states. One bad drought, a major storm, or even an infrastructure attack could wipe out half the country's corn supply. And when corn goes, it takes everything with it. Chicken, beef, and even ethanol for your car all depend on corn. Climate experts are warning that La Niña weather patterns could bring either devastating floods or crushing droughts to these critical regions through early 2025. With no backup plan in place, the entire corn supply chain is hanging by a thread. 27. Soybeans, the global tug of war. Soybeans might not seem like a big deal, but they're a cornerstone of the global food system. From soybean oil and processed foods to animal feed for livestock, soybeans are everywhere. But here's the catch. 8 countries have already implemented 15 export restrictions on major food commodities, including soybeans. Brazil and Argentina, 2 of the largest soybean producers, are grappling with extreme weather that's decimating their crops. Meanwhile, China, the world's biggest soybean importer, is stockpiling at unprecedented levels, driving global prices through the roof. The numbers are grim. Global soybean production could drop by up to 35% by 2050, with an average decline of 12% across major crops. This isn't a temporary hiccup, it's a long-term crisis. And when soybeans become scarce, the ripple effects hit everything from your protein sources to your favorite snacks. $26, the bitter truth. Finally, let's talk about chocolate. Cocoa prices soared to $12,000, 0 cents per metric ton in late 2024, a staggering 300% increase from the start of the year. As of mid-2025, prices are still hovering around $10,000, 0 cents per ton. West Africa, which produces nearly two-thirds of the world's cocoa, is battling a devastating disease called cocoa swollen shoot virus. This isn't just reducing yields, it's wiping out entire plantations. Farmers are abandoning their fields, and new cocoa trees take years to mature. Europe, which sources 96 to 5% of its cocoa from countries like Ghana and Côte d'Ivoire, is facing what experts are calling a chocolate crisis. Premium brands are already raising prices, shrinking portion sizes, and even altering recipes to use less cocoa. The global chocolate market is still projected to grow, but only because prices are skyrocketing. Your favorite chocolate bar might soon cost as much as a gourmet meal, and it might not even taste the same. 25. Coffee, the brewing crisis. If you thought chocolate was in trouble, wait until you hear about coffee. Your morning cup of joe is under siege, and it's not a problem for the distant future. It's happening now. Coffee plants are incredibly sensitive to temperature changes, and with climate patterns spiraling out of control, traditional coffee growing regions are becoming less and less viable. Here's the kicker. The global coffee supply depends on just a handful of countries. When one of these regions gets hit by extreme weather, be it a drought, hurricane, or heat wave, the entire supply chain feels the squeeze. Prices are already creeping up, but experts warn that the next major climate event could send coffee costs skyrocketing. For coffee lovers, this isn't just about paying more. It's about the very real possibility of your favorite brew becoming a rare. 4. Olive oil liquid golden crisis. Remember when olive oil was just another pantry staple? Those days are over. Thanks to severe droughts across the Mediterranean, olive oil prices have surged to unprecedented levels, turning this once affordable kitchen essential into a luxury item. The situation is dire. Mediterranean countries, which dominate global olive oil production, are grappling with catastrophic drought conditions. This isn't a one-off event. It's the new normal, driven by climate change. Some restaurants have already started switching to cheaper alternatives because they simply can't afford real olive oil anymore. For consumers, the message is clear. Stock up while you can, because olive oil is quickly becoming as precious as its nickname suggests, liquid gold. 23. Avocados, the green gold rush. Avocados, once the poster child of millennial brunch culture, are facing a grim future. These creamy fruits are incredibly water intensive to grow, requiring hundreds of gallons of water for just one avocado. With droughts becoming more frequent and severe, avocado farms are struggling to keep up. Here's the twist. Most of the world's avocados come from a few specific regions, and these areas are increasingly vulnerable to climate change. When extreme weather hits, avocado prices soar and availability plummets. But it's not just foodies driving demand. The avocado oil market is booming thanks to its popularity in luxury skincare and cosmetics. This means we're not just competing with other avocado toast lovers, we're up against the beauty industry for the same limited supply. 22. Bananas, the fragile favorite. Bananas might seem like the last food you'd expect to be at risk, but the reality is shocking. Almost every banana you've ever eaten comes from just a few countries, Ecuador, Guatemala, and the Philippines, and they all grow the same variety, the Cavendish banana. This monoculture approach is a disaster waiting to happen. A single disease outbreak, a devastating hurricane season, or political instability in these regions could wipe out banana supplies for months. Bananas are one of the most consumed fruits globally, but their future is anything but secure. The next time you grab a bunch at the store, remember how precarious their journey to your table really is. 2001 marked citrus fruits the sour reality. Citrus fruits like oranges, lemons, and limes are facing a perfect storm of challenges. Florida, the heart of America's orange production, has been battered by relentless hurricanes, while California's citrus groves are grappling with severe droughts. Here's the problem. Citrus trees take years to mature. When a grove is wiped out by extreme weather, it's not just a one-season loss. It's a 5 to 7 year recovery process. The result? Citrus fruits are becoming harder to grow, more expensive to buy, and increasingly scarce. Whether it's your morning orange juice or a slice of lime in your drink, these staples are under serious threat. 20. Tomatoes, the fragile favorite. Let's talk tomatoes, because who doesn't love a good pasta sauce or pizza? But here's the harsh truth. Tomatoes are incredibly delicate. Being 95% water makes them highly perishable, and transporting them is a logistical nightmare. In some regions, perishable foods like tomatoes travel over 4,000 kilometers and spend up to 23 days in transit, 4 times longer than in Europe. Now imagine a tomato surviving that journey. It requires precise temperature control at every step. One broken down refrigerated truck, a delayed shipment at a port, or a power outage at a processing facility, and you've got a truckload of tomatoes turning into compost. Add skyrocketing fuel costs and a shortage of drivers, and the entire supply chain for tomatoes is hanging by a thread. The next time you enjoy a slice of pizza, savor it, because tomatoes might not always make it to your plate. 19. Leafy greens. The clock is ticking. Lettuce, spinach, arugula. These leafy greens are some of the most fragile crops in the food system. Their shelf life is measured in days, not weeks, and they start deteriorating the moment they're harvested. Most of these greens are grown in California's Central Valley and Arizona, regions that are grappling with severe water shortages and record-breaking heat, but that's not all. These crops are harvested by hand, and the labor shortages exposed during the pandemic have only worsened. Without enough workers, fields go unharvested, leaving produce aisles empty. To make matters worse, outbreaks of E. coli and other pathogens have already shut down entire farms for weeks. When the next crisis hits, fresh greens could become a rare luxury if they're available at all. 19. Beef, the cybersecurity time bomb. Beef lovers, brace yourselves. Remember the 2021 cyber attack on JBS, the world's largest meat processor? Hackers held the company hostage, forcing them to pay $11 million, 0 cents, just to regain control of their systems. Here's the scary part. The food industry is woefully unprepared for cyber attacks. A handful of companies control the majority of the beef supply, and many haven't invested in robust cybersecurity measures. This leaves the entire supply chain vulnerable to disruption. Now imagine a coordinated attack targeting multiple processors at once. Grocery store meat cases could go empty for weeks, and there's no quick fix. The beef industry's reliance on centralized systems makes it a prime target for future crises. 17. Chicken, the fragile protein. Think chicken is a safer bet because it's cheaper. Think again. Chicken processing plants are massive, centralized operations, and they're incredibly vulnerable. The pandemic exposed just how fragile this system is, with labor shortages affecting every part of the supply chain, from farm workers to processing plant employees to truck drivers. When these plants shut down, chicken simply disappears from store shelves. And here's the kicker. There's no backup plan. These facilities can't just shift operations to another location. When a plant goes offline, the ripple effects are immediate and widespread. 16. The fish and seafood, the vanishing catch. You'd think the ocean's vastness would make fish and seafood immune to shortages, but the reality is far more complicated. As ocean temperatures rise, fish are migrating away from their traditional habitats, seeking cooler waters. This has thrown the fishing industry into chaos. Generational fishing grounds are suddenly barren, and when fishermen do locate the fish, it's often in areas without the necessary infrastructure. No ports, no processing facilities, no transportation networks. It's like the seafood industry is playing an endless game of hide and seek, but the stakes are your dinner. With warming oceans and shifting ecosystems, the future of fish and seafood is anything but secure. 15. Eggs, the fragile protein powerhouse. Remember the infamous egg shortage of 2022 when a dozen eggs cost as much as a fancy latte? That wasn't just a random hiccup. It was a warning shot. Our egg supply system is hanging by a thread, and recent disruptions have exposed just how fragile it truly is. One outbreak of avian flu can decimate millions of chickens in mere days, leaving producers scrambling to recover. And here's the kicker. The egg industry hasn't learned much from past crises. They're still heavily reliant on massive centralized farms where a single sick bird can trigger a catastrophic domino effect. These farms are efficient but incredibly vulnerable, creating the perfect conditions for rapid disease spread. This isn't a hypothetical problem. It's already happening. With outbreaks wiping out flocks and driving up prices, eggs are a critical source of protein for millions, and when the supply chain falters, the impact ripples across consumers, bakeries, restaurants, and more. The protein crisis isn't just looming on the horizon, it's already here, quietly simmering. When it boils over, we'll wish we had paid more attention to the cracks in the system. Boating, sugar, the sweet supply chain meltdown. Sugar might seem like a minor player in the food world, but it's the unsung hero of countless products. It's not just the sugar you sprinkle in your coffee, it's in virtually everything. Bread, ketchup, granola bars, sauces, and even savory snacks. But here's the issue. Sugar production is concentrated in just a handful of key regions like Brazil, India, and Thailand. These areas are being pummeled by extreme weather events, droughts, floods, and hurricanes that periodically wipe out crops. Take Hurricane Beryl, for example. When it tore through the Caribbean, it didn't just destroy homes, it obliterated sugarcane fields that will take years to recover. In Brazil, droughts have slashed sugar production, while in India, fluctuating monsoon rains have wreaked havoc on harvests. And it's not just farmers who suffer. When sugar supply chains falter, it affects far more than desserts. Hundreds of processed foods suddenly become harder to make, leaving manufacturers scrambling to reformulate recipes or source alternative ingredients. If sugar shortages worsen, we may see a cascading effect that impacts everything from grocery store shelves to global food prices. 13. Vegetable oils, the hidden crisis in every bite. Vegetable oils are the invisible backbone of modern food production. Sunflower oil, palm oil, soybean oil, they're in everything from your morning toast to your midnight snacks. But here's the shocking truth. Getting these oils is becoming harder and harder. Sunflower oil, for example, was heavily supplied by Ukraine, but its production has been crippled by conflict. Meanwhile, key producers of palm oil, like Indonesia and Malaysia, are restricting exports to stabilize domestic markets, leaving global buyers in chaos. Soybean oil, another major player, is also facing challenges from unpredictable weather in growing regions like the United States and South America. The result? The prices of these oils are skyrocketing and shortages are becoming more common. Your favorite chips, cookies, and frozen meals could become either unaffordable or unavailable. And it's not just about convenience. Vegetable oils are a cornerstone of food production, used in cooking, food preservation, and even cosmetics. The vegetable oil crisis is already here, and most people don't even realize it's happening until it starts affecting their daily lives. 12. Onions, the culinary cornerstone at risk. Onions might not seem glamorous, but they're the foundation of countless dishes worldwide. From soups and stews to sauces and salads, onions are a fundamental ingredient in cuisines across the globe. But their supply chain is as delicate as a souffle. Onions require very specific storage conditions. Too hot and they rot. Too cold and they freeze. Too humid and they turn to mush. Fortunately, the regions that grow most of our onions, California, the Netherlands, and India, are grappling with severe climate challenges. California faces drought and heat waves, while India struggles with erratic monsoons that disrupt harvests. Even when onions are successfully grown, storing them without spoilage is becoming more difficult due to energy costs and unreliable storage infrastructure. One bad harvest or a single storage failure can send shockwaves through the food industry. Without onions, restaurants can't prepare basic dishes, home cooks are left scrambling for substitutes, and food processing plants grind to a halt. It's not just about missing flavor, it's about entire systems breaking down. Onions may seem humble, but they're an essential thread holding together global food production. 11. Potatoes, the starch staple under siege. Potatoes are a global favorite, starring in everything from French fries and mashed potatoes to potato chips and vodka. But this seemingly reliable crop is surprisingly fragile. Potatoes are highly sensitive to temperature changes, and climate change is wreaking havoc on their production. Too much heat, and they won't grow. Too much rain, and they rot ground. Not enough water, and they shrivel up. Potato-growing regions like Idaho, Ireland, and the Netherlands are experiencing increasingly erratic weather that makes farming a game of chance. Idaho, for example, has faced record-breaking heat waves, while Ireland has struggled with unpredictable rainfall patterns. And unlike grains, potatoes don't store well for long periods, which means there's no backup supply to rely on if a harvest fails. Even fast food giants like McDonald's have had to ration French fries in some countries due to supply shortages. The potato crisis isn't just about missing out on comfort foods. It's a warning sign of how vulnerable even our most basic crops are to environmental changes. If we don't adapt, this beloved starch staple could become a rare luxury rather than a reliable food source. Hello, honey, the pollinator crisis. Brace yourself, this one's a stinger. Honeybee populations in the U.S. are facing unprecedented collapse, with scientists predicting a staggering 70% decline by 2025. This isn't just a minor setback. It's a full-scale pollinator apocalypse. Recent surveys reveal a 62% loss of commercial beehives in just 8 months, driven by a deadly cocktail of mite infestations, viral diseases, poor nutrition, pesticide exposure, and habitat destruction. Farmers are struggling to keep up with the growing demand for pollination services, leading almond growers to accept anything with wings and a hive in a desperate bid to maintain crop yields. Here's the real shocker. 35% of the world's food supply depends directly on pollinators. Without bees, entire food chains start to unravel. No almonds, apples, cucumbers, or avocados. Even your morning coffee relies on these tiny workers. And it's not just about losing honey for your tea. It's about the cascading effects on global ecosystems and agriculture. When honey disappears, it's a sign of something much bigger, a food system on the brink of collapse. 9. Nuts, the water-draining gamble. Nuts may be a healthy snack, but behind the crunch lies a massive environmental cost. These crops are guzzling water at an unsustainable rate, with California producer of 82% of the world's almonds at the heart of the crisis. Between 2017 and 2021, almond and pistachio farming required an additional 523 billion gallons of water. That's enough water to supply 4 million households for an entire year. But climate change is making water increasingly scarce and weather patterns more erratic. For example, walnut production in California plummeted to just 600,000 tons in 2024 due to unpredictable temperatures, while almond shipments dropped by 21%. Despite prolonged droughts and water shortages, almond orchards expanded from 760,000 acres in 2011 to over 1.3 million acres in 2022, a risky gamble with nature. These water-intensive crops are now at the mercy of a drying climate, and without sustainable solutions, the nut industry and your favorite snacks could wither away. 8. Spices, the delicate flavor chain. Spices might seem like a small luxury, but their supply chains are some of the most fragile in the world. Most spices are grown in specific regions with unique climates, making them highly vulnerable to climate disruptions. For example, a drought in India, a flood in Indonesia, or a cyclone in Madagascar can wipe out entire spice harvests, leaving farmers and global consumers in a tough spot. Your favorite curry, chai, or pumpkin spice latte relies on single-source ingredients that don't have easy substitutes. When harvests fail, prices skyrocket and availability plummets. Recently, global supply chains for spices like cardamom and cinnamon have faced setbacks due to extreme weather events, leaving chefs and food enthusiasts scrambling. Spices may be small in size, but their absence leaves a gaping hole in global cuisine, altering the flavors and aromas that define countless dishes. 7. Tea brewing trouble. Tea drinkers, it's time to face the bitter truth. Changing weather patterns are wreaking havoc on tea production around the world. India's tea production, for example, dropped by 7.8% in 2024, with the Assam region, which accounts for over half of the country's tea output, bearing the brunt of the crisis. Rising temperatures and declining rainfall in Assam have created an increasingly hostile environment for tea plants. The region's average temperature climbed from 25.1 DEC in 2010 to 27 DEC in 2024, while annual rainfall dropped from 2,800 to 2,400 min. In some areas, tea plants endured over 130 days of extreme heat in 2023, well beyond their optimal growing conditions of 32 DEC. This strain on tea plants is not limited to India. Globally, prime tea growing regions in Kenya, Sri Lanka, and China could shrink significantly by 2050. If these trends continue, your morning cup of Earl Grey or soothing herbal blend may become a rare and expensive luxury. 6. Vanilla, the fragile luxury. Vanilla, the world's second most expensive spice after saffron, is facing a perilous future. Madagascar, which produces 85% of the world's natural vanilla, has been hit hard by climate disasters, including Cyclone Gaimon in March 2024. With winds exceeding 150 pm/h, the cyclone slashed vanilla production by up to 50%, leaving farmers and global markets reeling. The problem goes deeper than a single storm. Vanilla orchids take up to 4 years to mature, and their flowers must be hand-pollinated, making the crop highly labor-intensive and vulnerable to any disruptions. When a cyclone hits, it not only destroys the current crop, but also sets back several years of harvests. To make matters worse, 3 out of 4 vanilla farmers in Madagascar struggle to afford basic necessities despite growing one of the world's most valuable crops. With production dwindling and demand remaining high, prices for natural vanilla are skyrocketing. As this crisis worsens, vanilla may become an even rarer luxury, impacting everything from ice cream to baked goods. 5. Flour, the hidden dependency you never knew about flour. It's the backbone of countless recipes, from bread to cakes to pasta. You think it's as simple as grinding wheat, right? Wrong. The story behind fortified flour is far more intricate and precarious than most people realize. Here's the kicker. The UK's entire supply of calcium carbonate, a key ingredient in fortified flour, depends on a single quarry in France. That's right, just one. And the situation gets even more alarming when you consider that the quarry in England, which used to produce food-grade calcium carbonate, has completely ceased operations. So now, if anything disrupts that one French quarry, be it a strike, a natural disaster, or even a shift in the company's priorities, fortified flour could vanish overnight. We've already seen a glimpse of this vulnerability. Earlier this year, widespread protests in France caused massive supply chain disruptions. Imagine walking into your local supermarket and finding the baking aisle wiped clean of flour. No bread, no cakes, no pasta, just empty shelves. It's a stark reminder of how fragile our food systems really are. 4. Canned goods, the price of preservation. Canned goods have long been a pantry staple, offering convenience and longevity, but the cost of keeping those cans on the shelves is skyrocketing, and the ripple effects are already being felt. Steel tariffs have recently doubled, and manufacturers are projecting price hikes of up to 30 cents per can. While that might not sound like much, it adds up quickly. Families stocking up on canned goods for a month could easily see their grocery bill increase by $20, 0 cents, $30, 0 cents, or even $40, 0 cents. And it's not just about the cost to consumers. Smaller manufacturers, unable to absorb these rising expenses, are being forced to make tough decisions. Some are scaling back production, while others are discontinuing specialty items altogether. The result? A shrinking variety of canned goods on store shelves. We're already seeing some niche products disappear permanently, and if the trend continues, even everyday staples like canned soup and vegetables could become luxuries. 3. Frozen foods, the cold chain crisis. Frozen foods are a modern marvel, offering convenience and variety, but behind the scenes, they rely on a complex and energy-intensive cold chain that's becoming increasingly unsustainable. Every step of the frozen food journey, from production to transportation to storage, requires constant refrigeration, and with energy costs soaring, maintaining that cold chain is becoming prohibitively expensive. Grocery stores, warehouses, and transportation companies are all grappling with skyrocketing electricity bills, and those costs are inevitably passed on to consumers. But the challenges don't stop there. Extreme weather events, which are becoming more frequent and severe, are putting additional strain on energy grids. During heat waves, for example, non-essential refrigeration is often the first to be cut. This has already led to instances where entire frozen food sections had to be discarded because stores couldn't keep the power on. The bottom line, frozen foods are becoming a high-risk category, and if these challenges persist, we could see a significant reduction in availability. 2. The pasta, the end of an era. Pasta has long been a go-to comfort food, offering affordability and versatility, but its future is looking increasingly uncertain thanks to a perfect storm of challenges. At its core, pasta is made from wheat, and global wheat production is on the decline. In fact, it's projected to drop below 2023 levels by 1%. This might not sound like a huge decrease, but for pasta manufacturers, some of the largest wheat buyers in the world, it's a significant blow. And it's not just about the raw materials. Pasta production is an energy-intensive process requiring substantial amounts of power for mixing, extruding, and drying. With energy costs skyrocketing, the cost of producing pasta is climbing rapidly. Italy, a country synonymous with high-quality pasta, is feeling the pinch. Faced with wheat shortages and soaring energy prices, some Italian manufacturers have started rationing their products or switching to lower-quality wheat just to stay afloat. The result? Higher prices and potentially lower quality pasta on store shelves. 1. Baby formula, a crisis in the making. If you're a parent, this one hits close to home. Baby formula is a lifeline for countless families, but it's also one of the most vulnerable products in our food system. The manufacturing process for baby formula is incredibly complex, requiring precise ratios of vitamins, minerals, and proteins. These ingredients are sourced from all over the world, and the facilities that produce formula must meet stringent safety standards. As a result, there are only a handful of companies capable of making it. This means that any disruption, whether it's a factory closure, a supply shortage, or a contamination issue, can have devastating consequences. We've already seen how fragile this system is. The baby formula crisis that unfolded not long ago was a wake-up call, and the underlying issues haven't gone away. In fact, they're getting worse. Many of the ingredients used in baby formula come from regions that are politically unstable or vulnerable to climate change. A single bad harvest, a factory shutdown, or shipping delay could trigger another crisis, leaving parents scrambling to find formula for their babies.